Hey everyone, welcome back to Bold Faith Bible. I am in Eastern Kentucky. I'm wearing my disaster relief shirt, one of them. It's a little crazy over here for sure, but I wanted to shoot this video of us continuing our Bible study because priorities should be our study of the Word of God drives our mission. And so that's what we do here on the field. And so I don't want to interrupt the Bible study. As we go, we're going to continue in the book of Revelation, Revelation 17. Now this week we're going to be talking a lot about Babylon. This week and next week. Revelation 18 is a lot about Babylon as well. But it's talking about two different Babylons. Kind of the same because they're the same spirits, still driven by demonic forces and evilness. It is the, if you've ever heard the idea of city of God versus the city of Satan or the city of man. City of God versus Babylon. So in Revelation 17, we're going to be looking at spiritual Babylon or religious Babylon. And what we're going to see is that this is distinct from the Babylon we're going to see in Revelation 18. Now, are these things going to be literally called Babylon, or are they going to be, or is this kind of a figurative? And there's a lot of figurative language here, but I think it points to a reality that there is a religious Babylon. And we're going to see some of the aspects of that, some of the characteristics of that, both here and then in Revelation 18. How do we know that this Babylon in Revelation 17 is different than the Babylon in Revelation 18? We're going to see Revelation 17 pick up in verse 16. The 10 horns you saw and the beast will hate the prostitute. And the prostitute is speaking about Babylon in 17. Will hate the beast. They will make her desolate and naked, devour her flesh, and burn her up with fire. So the Antichrist and the kings of the nations are going to actually turn on this Babylon. But then in Revelation 18, we're going to see that there's this whole section where the world and the kings are all going to mourn the fall of Babylon. It's talking about two different Babylons. We're talking about this religious Babylon in chapter 17 that I would argue exists in to some level right now, and it will continue and it will grow as the tribulation begins. This one world religion, so to speak, this pinnacle of humanity against God will culminate in this false religion. But in the end, even the beast will end up hating this religion, this religiosity, and he will destroy it, utterly destroy it, and replace it with what comes in chapter 18, which is this great city, this one world government that is also the one world religion. So right now we have many nations and even multiple religions, multiple large religions. But there's a time coming that these religions will kind of unify, it looks like. We're going to see this. And then it's going to, it's going to be this pinnacle of humanity, and all people who are opposed to God will be like, yeah, this religion is it. It's either this religion or you're an enemy because you're a Christian and you reject it. And the Antichrist is going to say, I don't even like this language about God. In fact, you just need to worship me and my idol. And he will destroy this one world religion. So we're going to be seeing here that this is that the religious Babylon is related to as a prostitute, one which is convenient for people at the time, but eventually they're going to discard her because she is hated by everybody. Everybody hates her. God hates this false religion, but so does the Antichrist because there's too much truth in the mix. He wants to go all out, full heresy. So let's read chapter 17, and then we'll start picking it apart to see where we're kind of getting some of these things. Some of these things are going to come from chapter 18, though. Chapter 17, verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me. Now remember, chapter 17 is not like progressing the story. The last bowl in chapter 16, the next thing that happens is Jesus comes back. Chapter 17 and 18 are like, well, there's some more facts you need to know. So, as you can see, he's going back in time to before the bowls are poured out. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me. Come, I will show you the judgment of the notorious prostitute who sits on many waters. Many waters, speaking of many lands, many nations kind of thing. We're going to see that in chapter 18 where it explains that a little further. The kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her, and those who live on the earth became drunk on the wine of her sexual immorality. So he carried me away in the spirit to a desert. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 7 horns. That's the Antichrist, right? The scarlet beast is Antichrist. The 7 heads are the 7 kings, and the 10 horns are the 10 nation confederation. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She had a gold cup in her hand, filled with everything vile and with the impurities of her prostitution. On her forehead, a cryptic name was written, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the vile things of the earth. Then I saw that the woman was drunk on the blood of the saints and on the blood of the witnesses of Jesus, having killed the witnesses of Jesus, right? When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, Why are you astonished? I will tell you the secret meaning of the woman and the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is to come up from the abyss and to go to destruction. Those who live on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast that was, that is not, and will be present again. Here is the mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain for a little while. The beast that was and is not, and is himself an 8th king. Yet he belongs to the 7 and is going to destruction. Hang in with me. I know it's getting confusing. A lot of symbolic language here. We'll go through it. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they will receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will conquer them, speaking of Jesus, right? Because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. Those with him are called chosen and faithful. He also said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute was seated are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. That's where I said that's why we know what the many waters means. The 10 horns you saw and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his plan by having one purpose and to give their kingdom to the beast until God's words are accomplished. And the woman you saw is the great city that has an empire over the kings of the earth. Okay, so lots of stuff there to unpack. In the Bible, we see this city of man, or this city of rebellion set up against God. It starts in Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 through 10. We see Nimrod, whose name means let us revolt. He founds a city called Babel. Now we're going to see this city again when God confuses the languages and spreads the people across the face of the earth. We're going to see throughout the Bible God dispersing and separating. So when you see that there's like so many denominations, there's so many different churches out there, a lot of people will say that's just really disappointing. You'd think that all of God's people would all agree, they'd all be part together, they'd all come and join this one massive movement under one leadership structure, and they'd all get along. That's the man version. That's what the Antichrist will present. That is what Satan is all about, is conformity, forcing everyone into this uniformity, breaks down nations, breaks down distinctions. God, on the other hand, in order to compartmentalize evil, right? Just like a military ship or like the Titanic, right? They had these different compartments, so that if one was breached, the water would go into the one compartment, but it wouldn't spread to all the rest. And so that's what God has done, is he's divided the people up into many nations, so that if one nation becomes very wicked and evil, the other nations around it won't be as impacted by it. So that's why we have lots of denominations. We actually see the fact that there is denominations and schisms as necessary, so that it will be evident to all the folly of those who choose to do evil, who reject the things of God. And those who choose to follow God, it will be evident that they are walking with God. Not necessarily just with numbers, okay? Just because a church or denomination has lots of numbers doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, right? Oftentimes, it kind of points to that a little bit, but not always, right? Sometimes you can have lots of numbers, but very little life. Why are the people gathered? So we see throughout the Bible, the city of God is about dispersing, decentralization, people following God individually and as groups, but not like a top-down structure. Whereas we see Satan is working to make this unified thing. When they come together for the Tower of Babel, everyone's like, let's all come together and let's build one thing together. Let's all focus our energy on one thing in one place. And God's like, no, stop that. And he confuses the languages to spread them out. So when we see this religious Babylon, we're going to see these same kind of, that's one of the distinctives we're going to see, is this everyone's going to kind of agree. They're all going to be like, this is the religion. This is the correct religion. And we'll get into that a little more. But, and then we see Babylon come up again, because later on, the same city, the same area, is going to become an empire, and it's going to come in and it's going to take the Jewish people out of the land. This is take them out of the land for 70 years into exile, and then they will eventually return. But that is Babylon who does that. And let's pick up in verse 1 and walk through this now. So then one of the seven angels, speaking of the ones that hold the bowls that we saw before, came and spoke with me. Come, I will show you the judgment of the notorious prostitute who sits on many waters. Once again, we go forward here a little bit, and we see that verse 15, he said to me, the waters you saw were where the prostitute was seated are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. So this religious Babylon is spread over all the earth, right? Many waters. Which are the peoples of the earth. The kings of the earth, verse 2, committed sexual immorality with her. Now, what's it talking about? It's religion, right? How can the kings of the earth commit immorality? I mean, like, this is figurative, right? And it is figurative. It's speaking of the political systems that God has given the power of the sword, right? God gave the civil government this authority to judge and to execute judgment and make war and these things. And then he's given the church the gospel, the teachings of God, And when you start mixing the two, that's when you start getting this sexual immorality, this prostituting. The kings are dabbling in religion. They're playing with religion, and they're trying to control the worship of God and direct it. And that's how they are committing immorality. And so religion is doing the same thing. The religion is like, I want power too. Like, give me some of that power. Let's play politics. And so when you see the blurring between government and religion, this is when you get this abomination, right? God has clearly said government has these authorities, this role, and religion and the church has this role. He did not give the church the authority to execute people. He gave that to civil authority, and they should not be merged. The kings are basically just using religion to further their ends, which, of course, is an abomination, right? And the evil religious Babylon is okay with that. And we see a lot of this with, like, the Roman Catholic Church in history. And in other, like the Anglican Church did something very similar. When we see the church becoming subjugated in World War II, and the lead up to World War II, we saw this with the German churches. They came in line under the German government there, that I can't say on this channel. They compromised. They lended their voices and their strength to that, and it was an abomination. In all of those cases, an abomination. So the angel, in verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit to a desert, and I saw a woman, speaking of the sitting on a scarlet beast. So this is the religious Babylon, sitting on the scarlet beast, which is the Antichrist. Now remember, we've already heard what's going to happen. The Antichrist is going to turn on the woman and destroy her, because he actually hates her. This pretense, this soft peddling, this ecumenical fuzziness, he hates it, but he'll use it to build his empire across the world, and then when he has the power, he'll turn on it and say, worship my idol or die. The mask will come off eventually, is essentially what we're saying. But the religiosity of spiritual Babylon is the false mask that he will wear. So he carried me away in the spirit to a desert. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. Now remember, later we're going to hear that these 7 heads relate to, if you skip down to verse 9, here is the mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman has seated. A lot of people point to this as Rome because it has 7 mountains. That's one interpretation, possibly. Verse 10, they are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come. Now, what is that speaking of? 5 have fallen. Egypt, then Assyria, then Babylon, then Medo-Persia, or the Persians, then Greece. They have all, those empires have fallen. At the time of this writing, Rome still is. And this is pointing back to Daniel again. Rome, but then there's this one to come, this monstrosity, this second Rome, this final Roman Empire to come. So it says, one is, the other has not yet come, and when it comes, he must remain for a little while. That final empire will last under the beast and will rule all of the earth until the coming of Jesus. So that's what it means by back in verse 3 when it says 7 heads. Now, the 10 horns are the 10 confederation, 10 nations, 10 kings. The Antichrist is going to rip up 3 of them. We see that elsewhere. And he's going to replace them. And he's going to become like, the supreme ruler of them. And verse 4. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She also has a gold cup in her hand. Now, it's not to say that religion, if in Christianity, shouldn't be beautiful. We shouldn't seek to do our services in a way that is tries to capture the beauty and glory of God. But there are certain denominations that take this very far, and you start seeing the purples, the scarlets. You see these costumes. You see the gold, the precious stones, and the pearls. You probably have some denominations that have kind of popped up into your brain with that. This is the mark of the false religion. Is this pompous adornments, gold, and this trying to appeal to people's greed and delight and luxury. We're going to see this echoed in the false civil Babylon, or the political Babylon, in chapter 18, where much of this is going to be said about merchants and this wealth and this luxury. There's a lot to be said about our faith should be pure and simple. I'm not wearing a button-down shirt today. I'm wearing my disaster relief t-shirt, and this has been through the wash several times because it gets ridiculously filthy, crawling around in the mud and carrying stuff and getting dirt all over it. But that's all right, because we're talking about studying the Word of God, this beat-up Bible that has been wandering around in my backpack. Studying the Word of God takes a book and the will to study it. What do we need to really worship God in spirit and truth? To pray properly is to just get down on the ground and start praying. Do you need an altar? Do you need candles? Do you need gold and an idol to worship? Do you need a picture of somebody? What do you need to worship God? You don't need anything. Now, we can argue about whether those other things are helpful or not, but I would say that you need to have it through your thick skull that you need to worship God. You. Just you. Right? That's all you need. Jesus has paid the price to bring you into fellowship with Him. You don't need the candles. You don't need any of those other things. Now, if you want to use those other things, as long as they don't become too big of a distraction, okay. But when those things become a major portion of the religion, or even the focus of the religion, that's when you really start seeing this false Babylon religion. She had a gold cup in her hand, filled with everything vile and the impurities of her prostitution. On her forehead, a cryptic name was written. Back in the day, the prostitutes used to write their names on their heads. Sometimes they wore veils so you couldn't see their face, so they're kind of hiding their face so they're not out, they'd be out in public and no one can see who I am. But they'd have their, their name. I don't know if it's like exotic dancers where they have like a stage name or something like that. So you could find your favorite prostitute without actually seeing their face. So they have their name written across the forehead. So this prostitute has Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the vile things of the earth. Then I saw that the woman was drunk on the blood of the saints. She delights in executing and killing Christians, and on the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Greatly astonished. I think in English it kind of means just kind of confused or confuddled, as I like to say. But in the Greek it kind of has this like awe. Like wow. You know, kind of almost impressed. You know what I mean? And that's why he gets kind of admonished. Because the angel says to him in verse 7, why are you in awe of this woman? Why are you astonished at this woman? And he says later that not the believers, but the wicked people of the earth will be astonished by her. They will be, wow, that's pretty cool. The wicked people of the world will see this false religion as it becomes more unified and more centralized. They will see this false religion and say, wow. But you and I, as believers, ought not to say that. We ought to see it and be disgusted. This is a prostitute with everything vile and with the impurities of her prostitution. Now, that's yuck. Yuck. And that's how we should respond to this prostitute religion. What are some aspects of the prostitute religion? Some ideologies. The deity of man. This elevating man as above everything else. That's all about, does it make your life better? Does it make, the humans are the most important thing out there. You are God, essentially. You should determine what is right and everything. So, deity of man. Second, this triumph over death. This either marginalizing death, or saying like it won't really affect you, or it's not really real, or it's not a big deal. It's triumph over death. Whereas the Bible says Jesus has conquered death, and so therefore we don't have to fear it because we will pass through it into his presence. But the false religion will try to keep you from thinking about death, because then you'll start thinking about things that are important, and so just pushing death aside as much as possible. That's 2. Number 3, moral relativism. That, that's your opinion. If that's right for you, then cool, but that's not right for me. And don't try pushing your rights and wrongs upon me, and I won't push them upon you. We can all just do whatever we want to do. Whatever seems right in our own eyes is what we will do, essentially. Hearkening back to Judges, where the Israelites all did what was right in their own eyes. And then finally 4, this private enlightenment. This not having a collective revelation from God, but rather, what do you think? Everyone has a direct line to God, and just kind of whatever you feel. What do you feel is right? What do you feel things ought to be like? You see this private enlightenment, then there's nothing authoritative, because it's just whatever everyone wants to be. And the only thing that will really be out of bounds is any kind of absolutism. The Romans persecuted the Christians not because they didn't have room for another God. They had a problem with the Christians saying that God Almighty, the King of the heavens and the earth, and Jesus, his Son, are the only ones who should be worshipped. They say, worship the emperor, along with your Jesus. And they said, no, we won't. And that's why they persecuted them, was because they refused to worship the emperor. If they had worshipped the emperor as well as Jesus, they would have been fine. Plenty of other religions did that, but they refused to. That's why kind of the Jews were kind of persecuted as well across the Roman Empire, because the Jewish nation as a whole were kind of like, no, we can't worship your emperor. We can't do that. It was this exclusivism that is what offended the Babylonian religion, this false religion, right? Picking up in verse 7. Then the angel said to me, why are you astonished? I will tell you the secret meaning of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw used to exist, and doesn't exist now, and is about to come from the abyss and go to destruction. This is kind of speaking back to the Roman Empire that used to exist but now does not. We're in this gap without this, and then will exist again. This that will come up from the abyss. It is demonic in origin and power, and will go through the 7-year tribulation into judgment, or the end, right? We see those who live on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life, or all the believers, right? So those who are not believers from the foundation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast that was and is not and will be present again. The satanic, demonic power was, but is dormant right now in some extent, and will rise again, essentially, right? All the wicked people of the world, all those who are not believers, will be astonished and go, wow, like I said. And we've already spoken in verse 9 about the 7 kings, the 7 heads, and the 10 horns. But let's see verse 11 here. It says, the beast that was and is not is himself an 8th king. So there's 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 exists, which is Rome, and then the 7th kingdom, this Roman kingdom that is to come. And then basically the beast is going to take over this kingdom. And so he becomes an 8th king, but he kind of actually is part of the 7. So it's really the new 7th kingdom becomes the 8th kingdom, but it's really just the 7th kingdom, is basically what he's saying. Yet he belongs to the 7 and is going to destruction. The 10 horns you saw are the 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. They haven't, this confederation, this 10 kings have not come into being yet. But they will receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. They will receive temporary power, but then it says they have one purpose. They have only one purpose. Their purpose is to give their power and authority to the beast. And then together they will make war, verse 14, they will make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will conquer them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. Those with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So we see this, that their purpose is going to be absolutely to rebel, like Nimrod, this spiritual Babylon, which will culminate in this political, or this national or governmental Babylon, which we'll see in chapter 18. But before that happens, verse 16, the 10 horns you saw and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will always despise her because she has too much truth in her. She still makes this appeal to reason and righteousness and such. They will make her desolate and naked, devour her flesh, and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his plan by having one purpose, and to give their kingdom to the beast until God's words are accomplished. And the woman you saw is the great city that has an empire over the kings of the earth. Like I said, I believe that this spiritual Babylon already exists to some extent, and I see bits and pieces of it in different denominations out there, and you can think through that yourself and see if you kind of see some bits and pieces of that. This deity of man, this triumph over death, this moral relativism, this private enlightenment, this the trappings of materialism, the not being grounded in the Word of God. I kind of see that with some of the world religions out there too. And you see, when you see the parallels between different religions, some of these religious systems. It's amazing how closely Roman Catholic practices follow Islamic practices when you look at them. It's actually quite startling how much of it actually is crossed over. And, why is that? And there has been a lot of talk about trying to bridge the gap between Catholicism and Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism, and trying to create this one world religion. And they have tried this ecumenical movement of what common ground can we find. And let's all come together and sing Kumbaya, or whatever else we can agree on. And that is not God's way on the earth. It is to compartmentalize the evil so that it does not spread. Whereas Satan and the Antichrist want to bring everyone together so that he can corrupt them completely all at once. So we are in dangerous times as we have all the barriers of the world breaking down. My YouTube video here can be watched in most countries and all over the world. And that's an amazing opportunity, but that also means that false teaching and false religion can spread equally as fast, and if not faster. The corruption can spread much more rapidly. Corruption that happens in Hollywood can be spread digitally around the world now. That is not good. But also we have a tremendous opportunity to be witnesses for the Lord all over the world, in every place. Tremendous opportunity, but dangerous times as well. All right, folks. So glad to have you with us. Do keep praying for us here in Eastern Kentucky as we continue to minister. My team from Pennsylvania will be arriving here shortly. I'm wrapping this up so that I can get up to meet them and welcome them and get them situated here. We're about to pack, I think, like 40-some people, 40-some men into this Baptist center. It's like a gymnasium, basically. It's going to get a little crazy in here pretty soon. So God bless you all, and I will see you guys later. If you have some time to check out some other Bible studies, I'll put those up right here. Otherwise, God bless you, and see you later.